Go.
Go! Welcome back to Splitting Hairs, the Splitting Hairs duo studio. We were going to do it live together, but hey, the magic of Zoom brings us back together. How are you today, Annabelle?
Good, I can see you. It's always
Isn't that
been, it's always
amazing?
been audio pretty much all of last year.
I know. So, look, everyone, here's our faces. We haven't changed that much. I mean, have we? I don't feel like I have.
I got a haircut, but I put my fringe back for today, so I look exactly the same.
But you're like one of those hair freak people. It just grows so quickly.
Yeah.
You're lucky. Anyway, that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about some classical music stuff because that's what Splitting Hairs is all about. Classical music and the myths associated with. So what's our myth today?
Well, it's something that I've been talking about to you for a long time, isn't it? But when you go to concerts and it says this orchestra's, world premiere of this piece, and there's all this hype, and it's like, this is amazing, modern, living composer, and it's like awesome, and then it gets such a great reception from the audience, and the composer comes out on stage and everyone applauds, and then what happens to that piece? It gets
Then what happens
on,
to that piece?
It gets performed on the Friday and the Saturday, and then what happens after a piece is premiered? Where does it go?
So the issue is, what happens to all the world premieres? And is it such a big deal to have a world premiere? Because what happens to that composer as well? After their piece is premiered, what next? They don't keep getting royalties from it unless people play it again and again. So performance rights, a lot of composers have performance rights associated. Yeah. A lot of my composers don't because they're young, up and coming. They just want their piece played. But if you're an established composer, you have people have to pay to play your music, and fair enough. So a premiere, yeah, there it is. Woohoo! And then what?
And then what? I don't know. This is the
thing. Sometimes we do one and then we'll do it again a year or so later because it was cool. And we know it, and we know the instrumentation, and we know the composer. Oh, can we just quickly do that piece again? So MSO is pretty good at doing repeats, like Joe Kindamo's drum kit concerto. We've done that twice. It's kind of unusual to do a living composer, make a big deal out of the premiere, and then do it again. So I was quite happy to see that piece come back because it was a really cool piece, and it not only gave Joe a second go for people who didn't hear it the first time, but David Jones, the drummer, he got another chance to play a concerto, and he is absolutely world class. And especially during COVID, a lot of his work dried up because he's not a salaried musician the way I am. So yeah, it's important to remember. I think a premiere is great, whatever, but what about if it was a good enough piece? Let's do it again and again and again. Let's make it part of the canon. Oh, I remember that piece from Hamer Hall 2015. I'm so glad they're doing it again instead of only once and then it goes in a drawer.
Yeah, this comes down to like it's got to get pushed into the standard rep. It's free to play Beethoven 5 and everyone knows it because it's been continually played every year since it was written, really. So how do you get new composers competing with those big guns from way back when?
Yeah, it's a completely different mentality, isn't it? The only similar thing I can think of is if we play movies over and over again. We've done West Side Story twice to the
I missed
movie.
it.
Twice?
I was babysitting your kids.
Oh, and I'm sure he thanks you for your efforts. But yeah, those sorts of soundtracks are in the canon. Like everyone knows the Star Wars soundtrack. If that comes up, that's more of a standard piece of repertoire for a totally different kind of audience. They're not the ones that come and hear our Tchaikovsky. They're a different audience. So they love hearing that repertoire come back and back and back. So yeah, how do we close the gap between making a big deal out of world premieres, which is a big deal. I mean, if you're a composer and your piece is getting played by, say, the MSO for the first time, that is a big deal for you.
That's your moment.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily lead to new work, more commissions. It can, but it doesn't necessarily, because often the big institutions want to commission more, say, more females or more Indigenous interaction or more. So you do this one thing and then you've got to move on to another directive. Then you've got to move on to another kind of composer. So it's kind of an interesting time at the moment where it's heavily politicized. So even if that guy is fantastic composer. The brief is now, let's give more women a chance, or let's give the Indigenous community more of a voice. So, yeah, it's kind of awkward at the moment where it's not enough that you're good. You have to fit some kind of political brief. Does everyone notice how Annabel didn't say something just then? Annabel refuses to talk politics on this show. One day I'll get it out of her.
You don't want to know. No, I think it's really great. Like, we were just at, MSO a couple of weeks ago. And that's our trailer. No, I was at MSO a couple of weeks ago, and it was Deborah Cheatham's new work for viola concerto. It was a Aboriginal viols, and it was amazing. And I went to both of those back-to-back concerts, and I heard it twice, and I was way up the back for the first one, then I was right up the front for the second time, and it was just the whole thing. It was awesome. I love that you personally and all these major orchestras are putting so much emphasis on new music and premieres, and just giving a platform to more and more people. And I've talked about this many times, I love the standards. I'll go see Dvorak 9 or Brahms. Like, I don't care. It was Brahms 2 a few weeks ago. But then I'm like, okay, but I really liked that new work. How can I hear it again? That's right. This is what happens to you, isn't it? You want to listen to it more than once. So before you go on with that point, because I know what you want to say, and I think it's really important that people hear it. So you heard Nanyubak twice in the same night. So this is the world premiere of Deborah Cheatham's Viola Concerto. It's the first movement of a concerto that she's writing. Did you know that? I didn't.
Okay, so this is the first movement of a three-parter. So the fact that you heard it twice was really amazing, because most people didn't go and see the 2 concerts back to back. So how did the piece change in your mind on the second hearing? Because this is what we're talking about. What happens to a piece after it premieres?
Yeah.
Well, it goes into a drawer and doesn't get played again. But you heard the same piece twice in 2 different concerts.
It's really important. I have to say, it does take into account, I was up the back in the balcony the first time and then up the front the second time. But because I'd heard it once, I'd had that first impression of it. And the second time I could hear more. I could hear more of the orchestra. I was much closer and I could see better. But it was just, it's sort of like the first time you hear it, you hear the framework or the boning of it, and then the second time you hear everything else or more and more. And it's like, I've spoken to this to you for a little bit, which is, at the moment I'm listening to a lot of chamber work and I'm ignoring the melody that I'm sorry, first violins, but I'm listening to the basses and I'm hearing things I didn't hear before of pieces that I know really, really well.
So your point was, you're a violinist, and lately you've been listening to a lot of repertoire with your focus down the bottom end, which is something that first violinists don't do at all.
Violinists don't do.
Yeah.
Unless you get put on second violin, then that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So that's a really fantastic thing for you to do. So by the same token, you listen to Nanyubak once and you got the framework. You listen to it again and then more of that detail comes through. Yeah. So that would have been great. And I believe that premieres need to become second, third and fourth performances in people's mind.
Yeah, totally.
So maybe the focus should be, from the big institutions at least, let's commission it, let's do the world premiere, and where else can we take it? Where else can we perform it? Because then you'd get a whole lot more value for money, actually. And then it gives more of a advertisement for the composer. And even if the audience doesn't like it per se, it's okay, because it's something new, it's something interesting. It's going to go for 10, 15 minutes. It's not going to go for an hour and 15 minutes. And it just gives the audience a little bit wider scope for what's possible with the symphony orchestra.
And honestly, if they don't like it, you appreciate the standards more. So.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm sure those people have their taste according to, well, I like Tchaikovsky, but I don't like Brahms, or I like Brahms, but I don't like Sibelius. I like Sibelius, but I don't like, Smetana, whatever. Everyone's got their personal composers.
I like all of them.
I don't know. I have a bit of I'm trying to, I want to interview Ben Northey soon, and he said, yeah, that'd be great, I'd love to. And I said, okay, Ben, what do you want to talk about? He's like, Sibelius. And I said, no.
Because he really likes Sibelius.
He studied at the Sibelius Academy.
Oh.
Yeah, so
Wow.
he's well into it. And, that's... He conducted Sibelius. What did we do? Seven the other day, and it was fantastic. It was such a great piece. I thought, I've never played this in my life.
I didn't know.
So for me, it was a premiere.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a 7. I've told you this story. I was like,
Yeah.
I was playing Sibelius 2, and I have excerpts for Sibelius 3, and I was like, oh yeah, there's at least 3. And then I got booked to do Sibelius 5, and I was like, there's a 5th one.
Yeah.
And then that rehearsal I was at with you, and there's a 7. So I have to do more. I love his music. And so I should know more.
And speaking of premieres, which is what this is all about, Sibelius always seems to feel like a premiere because it looks really easy on the page. You go, oh, yeah, I've played that before. That looks really familiar. And then you get to it and it's like, you don't know where anyone's changing in the other sections. So you sort of spend this whole time floating going, where am I?
It's it's just layers upon layers, but it's like, I don't know. Like, it's not like a Beethoven. Like, the Sibelius just mix in everywhere.
Besides the fact that everyone's memorised every Beethoven symphony, it's definitely not like a Beethoven. But even if you'd never played, just say Beethoven wrote 10 and they just found it in a drawer, it'd be the same as the rest of them to a certain degree because Beethoven has his language.
Yeah. Do you think out of it's not Sibelius, Beethoven 1 to 8, they're kind of like they're all different, but they're all Beethoven. But then do you think 9 stands out?
Well, 9 stands out because of the weirdness in it, but if you've played the late quartets, then 9 is pretty tame compared to the late quartets. But it's all part of the same kind of stream of consciousness that's developing over a lifetime.
I have a friend that's like, can we please do the C-sharp minor quartet? And I'm like, no.
Oh my God.
I don't want to.
Yeah, my brother Dan made me play all those late ones. It was like, my back was really sore, put it that way. All my stress about it went into my lower back.
I'll do them all, but violin 2.
Don't think that violin 2 is a piece of cake. It is not. Monica had so many tantrums. Hi, Moxie.
Okay, back to our topic of premieres.
So even an old piece that no one's played can be a premiere as well. I mean, I know that's not exactly what you're talking about, but the response that musicians have to it is very similar to what the audience will have to a piece they've never heard before.
I can ask you this question because I know that you've commissioned a lot of works, but the standard rep is all of people that have died. Yeah. But why is it important that we still write music, or composers still write music, and then we still... Yeah, I'm asking. That's
a good question, Annabel.
There you go.
Why is it still important that we write music? Because the orchestra is a kind of 19th century thing. Why are we still writing music for an old 19th century institution, basically?
Well, go on.
Because it's my salary and I don't want it to die. It's how I make my money. And people still want to go to it.
Yes, they do.
Because people still want to go, but not everyone wants to go. But those who don't want to go will come and see a movie, or they'll come and see Tina Arena, or they'll come and see...
Well, that's the orchestra becoming relevant in the 21st century, and we've spoken
about useful.
Useful.
Yeah.
But, why would a musician who can write music want to go to university to study composition if it's... It sounds like it's really, really difficult to... I'll be honest. Get a gig or make a career out of it.
Yeah.
You've got the big names in Australia and globally, and it's like, wow, how do you get to there? I wouldn't have any kind of clue. I think it's really brave. I think, you want to put yourself out there and write music and write your own music, and then you got to find the people like you that will like, yeah, write something for me, whatever, I don't care, and then I'll play it.
Yeah, well, just like the composers used the orchestra in the 19th century as a way to express themselves. So it wasn't really a community service. It was more about them expressing themselves. A lot of them were conductors as well, and a lot of them had connections enough so that they could find the money to put these big pieces on. But now the orchestra seems to be forced into a situation where, unless it's generating a lot of money, it's not sort of people think it doesn't deserve to survive unless it's generating a lot of money. I mean, we need subsidies from government and from donors and so on, but we generate a lot of money through ticket sales. It's a big operation keeping an orchestra alive, especially when the musicians are on salary. So I'm really grateful for that. But now what happens is my intention to commission composers is not to express myself, but to kind of smash through a little bit the old-fashioned way of thinking about music. So using different instruments, you know how I use electric and semi-acoustic instruments as well, and to sort of give composers a wider scope for how they want to express themselves too, because not every orchestra is going to give them a commission. So whilst they should be studying how to write in the traditional way, voice leading and orchestration and so on, they should also know that there is plenty of work in the other areas. It mightn't be the big
in the weird and
the
wacky.
big gig, but you know, you've got the cabaret world, you've got the spoken word world, you've got all sorts of you've got the play, you know, playwrights, incidental music for theatre, you've got music theatre, you've got lots and lots of things. You've got experimental music, got so many things you can do. And besides that, if you have a kind of income from anywhere else, somewhere else, anywhere else, you can do what you want. You can write whatever music you want. You can make whatever recordings you want. You just have to bother to tell people about it.
And
so it's not as if MSO doesn't hire you, it's not as if that's it, dead end, game over. You know, that's sort of, I guess, the pinnacle of traditional institution hiring you. And if you need that validation, then sure, scratch away at the door until your squeaky wheel works, you know. But at the same time, don't turn your back on all the other genres and all the other amazing things going on, especially in a place like Melbourne. We're very independent here. We can do what we want. It's great. It's not like Vienna where, I mean, Vienna's got a great underground scene too, but the underground is created by independent individual people. Right. Whereas the establishment, it's set, you know, it's a bit harder to get into, you know.
Yeah, speaking of like the weird and wacky that people, music, like composers can really go for. Remember that Buddha Passion, which was that 3 like commissioned work by MSO, was it MSO LA and New York, Phil? Was it those 3 orchestras?
Yeah, I think so.
But you talk about weird, and I just remember the percussionist had big bowls of water. And
that was the water percussion concerto, Tan Dun. Yeah. Amazing piece of music.
That was one that I was then later talking to you about, going, okay, it's been how many years? 4 years since that? And I'm like, where's the recording of it? 3 massive orchestras helped commission that. It was an incredible work. It was so weird in such a good way, with that Tibetan throat singing. Like, and I'm like, cool. Is it on a CD for me to now buy? I want to buy it. Like, you know, that's now me getting annoyed about that.
Well, you can buy Tan Dun's music because he wrote the music for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon
his
movie.
His music's out there, yeah.
And his music's out there. Not all of his music's out there, but a lot of it is, especially the famous stuff to do with the film. But he is extremely experimental. But anyone can be experimental, but the background of what he does is always really meaningful, really spiritual, and really historically tied up in Chinese culture, in the sense that they're losing their culture and he's trying to preserve it. So he will go all around China and do the most amazing research and then write a response to the research that he's made.
That's a really good topic. I might write that down. Music as a way of preserving culture.
Yeah. And not only the way we preserve culture, which is to just keep playing Beethoven. Tan Dun writes new music expressing culture as he sees it, and in a way it's much more educational for, say, Western people to experience that, because he's put it in a way that Western people can understand, rather than, well, let's just go and see a Beijing opera, which we won't understand, right? So that's pure old-fashioned whatever. But what he does is he makes it so that his community remembers it, and our community can learn a it.
Yeah, I think
that's what for me, is one of my favourite composers.
This goes to music education, which is what we're going to talk about in a later episode again. But we're saturated in Western classical, which is not a bad thing to learn as our cornerstone and, you know, music, classical music. But if it's the only thing we learn, then when we hear something that's not that, it's sort of hard. It's like hard and weird, and we don't understand it. And maybe there's a I don't know, lack of understanding there. But
it's even worse than that. What you're saying is correct, but it's even worse than that. We don't even learn full classical music education. We only learn the Germanic composers.
But see, I always come to the point is that Germanic's not wrong or bad. It's just not the whole story.
It's not the whole story at all.
So much more.
It's not even part of our story. Like if we, at least the English tradition has the decency of incorporating its own folk music. Australia doesn't do that. You know,
we have
Australia,
an identity crisis.
Well, we do, and that can be definitely another topic, the identity crisis of musicians in Australia. Yeah, so premieres, big deal. Where's the second, third, fourth, fifth performance? I know that I want to program certain pieces out of the pieces I've commissioned for very specific reasons. How quickly can I get it performing standard again? If it's way too hard, chances are I don't have enough time to program it again. And it's just a shame because there's about 3 pieces in that pile that I showed you that were absolutely stunning, sensational. I would love to play them again, but I know...
Wait, can I guess which one? Can I say?
Yeah, there's really just one.
Fire in My Ears? The
third movement. Yeah.
Which I've seen that music, I'm like,
It's great.
That's harder than Ezai. You pick the hardest Ezai, I reckon that's harder.
Ezai's easy compared to what that man wrote in the third. And I'll say it again, I love it. His name is Daniel Mazmanyan. It's on my SoundCloud. Fire is in Mine Ears.
Yeah,
third
we'll
movement.
We'll link it because it's so good.
It was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
But that's okay. Question. This is a little bit of a tangent, but as far as people when they say, "Oh, it's good music" or something, or it's easy work, can simpler music that's maybe technically easy to play still be up there as what is good? First of all, like good and professionally written or something. Because I mean, there's a whole minimalist movement, and I can listen to really, really simple Philip Glass and be like, "This is incredible," but it's not that piece that you've got that fire in me. Like so what's the what I'm saying? Like, does it have to be difficult to then be impressive or something?
Right. Well, yeah, I think some people do think it has to be difficult to be impressive. Yeah, I think there's definitely a mentality out there that says it can't be good if it's simple, and it can't be new if it's tonal. There's a real anti-tonal brigade out there. So if music has a predictable chord progression, then it's not taken seriously by the sort of post-Germanic second Viennese school brigade of it has to be hyper complex or unintelligible to normal humans for it to be meaningful in any way. Now look, if that represents your state of mind towards the world, if you're a composer and you're composing like that and you feel like an unbelievable, unfathomable chaos about the universe, then be my guest. Write music like that because that's how you're feeling about the world. But if you're writing that music because you think it's meaningful in a general sense, look around you. Some people have very beautiful, simple, meaningful lives without the complication of post-war insanity, right? And if you're writing that in this country and you don't have a sort of direct connection to any kind of trauma of the Second World War or any kind of post-expressionistic tendencies in your real world experience, what are you writing about? What's the meaning of it? Because it doesn't mean anything to me. I had a great childhood. This hyper complex, unintelligible, too difficult to play, which adds a very on purpose, intentional stress to the performer. That was a fad, like in the late 80s, early 90s. It was literally called hyper complexity, and it was supposed to make it so hard for the performers that added to the stress of it.
I heard my friend telling me that there's a piece of music that was written for a quartet where everything was in quarter tones or something.
Oh yeah, quarter tones they're hilarious.
But it took the quartet like 10 years to learn it or something. It was not just it was an out of tune piece, but it had to be tuned with every instrument.
Yes, yeah,
it was some crazy thing.
Yeah.
I just I want to listen to it, but almost it's like if it's that difficult, it's like
I don't mind the use of quarter tones, but when the whole thing is quarter tones, it's like, okay, really? How are we going to decipher what the quarter tone loses its meaning if it's surrounded by quarter tones?
And you're just playing in a different key or something.
Yeah, exactly. You're just playing in a sort of subatomic universe key. Yeah.
All right,
it's fine. People can do what they want.
All right, summarize.
All right, here's the summary.
Yeah, premieres. Some pieces do get played again.
Yeah.
But it should be more. In my opinion, it should be more.
Yeah, I think so too.
I want more of a balance between Brahms 2 and whatever else. I want to hear more from all types of composers and stuff. I'm the person that's like, I want to hear it again and again and again and have it on my iPod and walk down the street listening to it.
Yeah, you want to give things a chance. You don't want to just write something off on first hearing. That's what I like about you. You're interested. Your interested brain is really strong. It's like, well, that was weird. So why was that weird? Let me listen to it again. Where's the recording? Oh, there's no recording. Oh, it wasn't even videoed. Oh, it's not available.
I know, but I get really like, meh. But the point is, like, it's really good that the established music, ensembles or whatever, the establishment are at least putting an effort in to
definitely
find composers, find musicians, all of it, world premieres. I'm just saying I want to see more of those same pieces repeated. Not just more premieres, but repeated again.
Yeah. I agree.
Because I think it's equally as important as the Beethoven fives out there.
Yeah. I mean, when those standards were premiered, a lot of them really disgusted the audience. There was a lot of music that Beethoven wrote on first hearing the audience hated. They stood up and screamed no in some parts.
Who was it that said no, the Tchaikovsky violin concerto would be too difficult and wasn't good?
Oh, yeah, I mean, almost every violin concerto that came out around that time, they're like, no, too difficult, I'm not playing it.
So is it actually difficult or not good, or is it the audience and that's saying, oh, it's not? But then once we say, oh, it is good, then it becomes the standards and stuff. So
yeah, it depends who's saying what, really.
Exactly,
Yeah, that's right. All right, cool. That was great. Look, welcome back to Splitting Hairs, everyone, and hopefully this didn't have too many glitches, and we'll keep going like this for a while.
Yeah. All right.
Can see our beautiful faces. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Splitting Hairs. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, and if you're listening on one of the audio-only platforms, jump over to YouTube where you can see more content and what we look like.
I'm the young one. Like, share, and subscribe. And we have all the social medias like normal people. So go and follow us there as well.
Awesome. Okay, bye.
Sup, bye.